It was above average.
By August, Jarrah, like his co-conspirators, had earned a single-engine private pilot certificate. Phase 1 of the plane's operation was now complete. Their plans proceeded until a mistake by Atta almost exposed them all. By late 2000, 3 members of the Hamburg Cell, Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehi, and Ziad Jarrah, had earned their pilot licenses at flight schools in Venice, Florida. Back in Hamburg, the 4th member of the cell, Ramzi bin al-Shiba, who'd failed to get a visa to the United States, continued to play a vital role in the so-called planes operation. According to bin al-Shiba's interrogation, Atta traveled to Germany in early 2001 to meet up with him. Atta informed his old friend that the flight training was complete. The operation now entered its final phase.
What they had left to do was figure out how to take over the planes, which flights to target, and then to go about finalizing the details of it.
Bin al-Shib then traveled to Afghanistan to personally deliver the news to al-Qaeda leaders. When Atta tried to re-enter the United States at Miami airport, he was detained for traveling on an expired visa. This error by the leader of the Hamburg Cell could have ruined the entire operation. In an attempt to salvage his mission, Atta told officials about his flight training, explaining that he hoped to one day become a pilot. Eventually, he managed to persuade them to allow him back into the country. Throughout the summer of 2001, the men hammered out the details of their plan. They studied flight patterns and schedules, focusing on cross-country flights that would be loaded with fuel. They also discovered that small knives would not be confiscated by airport security. Each operative took numerous cross-country surveillance flights, flying on the same type of plane he would pilot on their mission: Boeing 767s and 757s. The men traveled in first class, sitting in seats that gave them a clear view of the cockpit. Atta concluded the best time to storm the cockpit would be about 10 to 15 minutes after takeoff, when the cockpit doors opened for the first time. And that 4 or 5 men spaced throughout the cabin would be enough to seize control of each plane. Additional men sent by bin Laden would carry out the job of storming the cockpit. These so-called muscle hijackers would then subdue the crew and passengers, while each Hamburg Cell pilot flew the plane into his target. Atta and bin al-Shib then began to coordinate the arrival of the muscle hijackers. In telephone calls and emails, these men are referred to as wedding guests, and the day of the attack, the wedding. As the plot progressed, Ziad Jarrah stayed in almost constant contact with his girlfriend, ISIL. In correspondence seized by German intelligence, it's clear ISIL knew Jarrah was hiding something. "Where are you?" she wrote. "I can't sleep at night anymore because I'm worried about you. Please just call me, please, and let me know that you're okay." Yet Jarrah never revealed his plans. In an email to ISIL, he wrote, "I arrived in good shape. I'm sorry I haven't gotten in touch for so long. I received your letter and thought it was really sweet. I love you, ISIL, and don't worry." In July 2001, Atta flew to Spain for a final meeting with Ramzi bin al-Shiba. It was the last time the men would see one another. They reviewed Osama bin Laden's list of approved targets, and to avoid detection, they spoke in code. They pretended to be students discussing fields of study. Arts referred to the Pentagon, law, the US Capitol building, politics, the White House, and architecture, the World Trade Center. The Twin Towers were important targets to bin Laden, symbolizing not only America's economic might, but because of New York's large Jewish population, Jewish America. Atta agreed to all the targets except one. He insisted that the White House was too difficult to reach. Ultimately, that target was struck from the list. At their meeting, Atta expressed his concern that Ziad Jarrah might be having second thoughts about the operation.
Atta was the perfect soldier, and he wanted everybody to be perfect. He was a perfectionist, and he wanted everybody to be a perfectionist, everybody who was under his command.
On his trip to Spain, Atta also bought a pocket knife, which authorities believe he took on his mission. That summer, Jarrah flew on a one-way ticket to visit ISIL in Germany. It remains unclear whether he intended to return to the US to complete the mission. In Hamburg, bin al-Shibah met Jarrah and persuaded him to see the plan through.
Jarrah actually nearly flipped at more than one point. Probably would have withdrawn. And Ramzi bin al-Shibah told me that he had to talk to Ziad Jarrah himself to calm him down.
In mid-August, Jarrah flew back to the United States. Shortly after his return, Jarrah left Atta a voicemail message. Atta's mobile phone and the message were later recovered from a rental car found at the Portland International Jetport in Maine. On the message, Jarrah refers to Atta as his boss. The message suggests that Jarrah had rededicated himself to Atta and their mission. The Hamburg Cell now began making their final preparations for the attacks. Atta and al-Shehi would hit the World Trade Center, Jarrah the Capitol building, and a fourth pilot, a 29-year-old Saudi named Hani Hanjour, would strike the Pentagon. Hanjour had been chosen by al-Qaeda to replace Ramzi bin al-Shibah as the fourth pilot. If any pilot could not reach his assigned target, he was to crash the plane. Mohammed Atta chose the date of the attacks. According to bin al-Shibah, Atta conveyed the message to him in the form of a riddle: a lollipop, a slash, and two branches. 9/11. The September 11th plot was just hours away from completion. The work of the Hamburg Cell was nearly finished. On the 10th of September, 3 members of the cell, along with 16 other hijackers, moved into position. Mohammed Atta and another hijacker hired a rental car and drove from Boston to Portland, Maine. They checked into a motel and ate their final meal at Pizza Hut. The men withdrew some money from a cash machine and went shopping at Walmart. An al-Qaeda operative sent the hijackers a handwritten note preparing them for their part of the mission. One was later found in Atta's luggage. In it were instructions for battle. One section titled "The Last Night" ordered Atta to steel himself for what lay ahead. "Vow to accept death," it read. "Obey God and his messenger, and do not quarrel together, and so lose heart." That night, Ziad Jarrah wrote a chilling letter to his girlfriend. "My dear ISIL, I did what I was supposed to do. You should be very proud of me. It's an honor, and you will see the results, and everybody will be happy." On the morning of the 11th of September, Jarrah made a final phone call to ISIL. When she answered, he told her 3 times he loved her, then hung up. According to flight bookings, the men traveled under their own names and had little trouble at airport security. Later that morning, 19 terrorists boarded 4 different aircraft. At about 8:25 a.m.,